And I'm going to go ahead and read through everybody that we have on online. And if you'd like to just say aye as we go through, then everybody can know who's on the call here. So I am Kelly Sheen, District Manager for the Trinity County Resource Conservation District and Collaborative Facilitator. We have Pat Frost and Carol Fall.
Yep.
And Bob Morris.
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello.
Actually, Bob, we're hearing you both through the phone call and through your standard Zoom connection there with the video.
Oh dear, I don't know
what to do about that.
So I'll mute you on the video.
Okay, thanks.
Next, we have John Knight.
Yeah, yes.
We have Osley Welsh from the RCD.
Hello.
Jerry Cousins.
Hi there.
Tom Waltz.
Yes, indeed, I'm here.
It's Carol Spinos.
Yes, I'm here.
Chris Cole from the RCD.
Hello.
Mike Dixon from the Trinity River Restoration Program.
Hey, good morning, Kelly. And you can record me as that or representing the Trinity County Fish and Game Advisory Commission, whichever you'd prefer. I'm dual hatting.
Dual batting. All right. Thanks, Mike. Okay, John Heyman.
Hello.
Larry Winter.
I'm here.
Hi, Larry.
Hello.
Sally Aldinger.
I'm here.
Hi, Sally. Welcome. Long time no see. Chris Losi from South Fork Management Unit.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Arnold Whitridge.
That's me.
Amber Machado from Shasta, well, the NRA, Shasta Trinity National Forest.
Here.
Larry Glass.
I'm here.
Okay, Joseph and Susan Bauer.
Hi for both of us.
Kenneth Baldwin.
Yeah, here.
Welcome, Kenneth.
Thank you.
Dylan Sheedy from the Watershed Center.
Good morning, everyone.
Jennifer Mata from BLM.
Good morning.
Judy Morris, Trinity County Supervisor.
Here.
Good morning, Judy.
Good morning, everyone.
Looks like we have Stephanie Reese on from Shasta Trinity National Forest.
Good morning, everybody.
And the last person that I'm seeing currently is Kathleen McCulley, our Grizzly Corps member here at Trinity County RCD.
Hello.
Hey, I think that's everybody.
And we have had 3 emails identifying proxies. Carol Fall for Susan Molyneux, Jerry Cousins for Ross Molyneux, and Dick Morris, who's not on the call, for Paul Hoosier. Are there any other proxies that need to be identified?
Is it too, I don't know, Supervisor, if Brown is joining us or not. I'm happy to be his proxy, but I don't know if you need permission from him first.
It should be with his permission, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Quickly, are there any edits, comments on the collective memory from back in July? We got a quick note from Arnold that we had not included him as being in attendance, and he was, so we'll make that correction. No? Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that, Pat? Oh, I guess it's in the recording. I'll pick it later.
Arnold didn't show up as being in attendance, but he was there.
Okay, very good.
And are there any items that we don't have on the agenda that are time sensitive that need to be taken up this meeting? No? Okay. Quickly moving along then. So forestry issues, we kind of, one way or the other, ended up being, we talk about it, so we thought we'd spend a little bit of time this morning hearing about kind of wildfire overviews, updates, what's the status today, has, fair planning started for rehab and restoration, that sort of thing. And certainly I think the collaborative would like to know at this point what we do know about the projects that we've been working on and the status of those as it relates to wildfire. So I'm not sure who, most of that was in Six Rivers, but certainly some Shasta Trinity. So I don't know who wants to take the lead on starting that discussion. Don't anybody jump in too quick.
Good morning. This is Carol from the Six Rivers. Well, I was hoping Ted was going to join, so I didn't want to be premature.
Yeah, I understand.
So it's a little awkward, but I can share this, that as far as the Mad River and the projects, first 48 acre woods were impacted, of course, by the complex. Acre woods, I'm hearing roughly 50%. A lot of it was high severity. First 48, I'm not clear about percents. We're currently working up overlays and analysis to look at what units, certainly in the active sale, which is first 48, were affected, along with other sales on the Mad River that were directly impacted within units under contract, not yet implemented. So that's a high priority, along with looking at some of this emergency response of the fire-killed roadside eminent hazard trees, and that some of that material is being, I think, decked or piled on the side of the road. So we're really looking at, and I've been just reached out honestly yesterday to see what the regional perspective is as far as NEPA obligations linked to the emergency response. So far I'm holding, hearing back from Al Olson and Barney. But what we're looking at a minimum is a decision memo. Again, this is all very preliminary, but a decision memo that's prepped under the Wildfire Resiliency CE, allows up to 3,000 acres. We won't even get close to that, but it's targeting what's down or imminent hazard tree. So that will be some of the discussion. There's a lot of unknowns relative to the true impacts and our compliance with our existing NEPA decisions. For instance, Beaver Slide was an EIS, Acre Woods was a decision memo, first 48 was an EA. So obviously there's different obligations we have in documenting what we call changed circumstances. It's a little tricky right now because most of the staff obviously are fully engaged in bear recovery and figuring out what that plan should look like and the logistics of implementing the mitigations. But we're well aware that we have to somehow get together and look at are we within our original NEPA decision meeting? Are the determinations still valid, right? Because that triggers some additional analysis potentially. As far as rat tail, so that was not affected, so it's still a green sale. I was, hoping Ted would be here. We're currently, and I'm looking for input from the collaborative, which is why I jumped on realigning the program and determining what this new sequence of priorities should be. And also the context as far as the similar to fire and fuels, what agreement as far as what level of, say, tree removal or hazard tree removal or salvage is going to be supported by the collaborative. And so a quick example would be, we've had discussions about building new spur roads, right, to access. So that's a question, really. There's, those kinds of things that I, with Larry and that working group, certainly and Kristen Lark, to follow up on, because that will really streamline my ability to get some NEPA going quickly. Along with that, I don't want to take too much time, but just to close on this for Mad River, we did have the Martin is listed now as threatened, even for areas, say on the Mad River that are outside critical habitat in their range. It does require reconsultation to amend the biological assessment. So separate from just looking at change circumstance, the forest has some work and is already coordinating with John Hunter on working through a completely new process called 4D. So it's not ESA in this case. So lots going on. I've been also processing, just so you know, the fire closure orders. So hopefully you're getting any updates as things settle down. Probably you'll see orders that open up areas. So that's just a heads up. And that's all I had, unless there's some questions.
So questions and thoughts for Carol.
I had a question. Carol, I followed on Facebook some of the reports, the operational reports that were put on by the fire teams. And one of the things that they do is they put in these contingency lines out ahead of the fire, in case the fire gets there. It's kind of an indirect. And they mentioned how they were gonna, the idea was to leave some of these fuel breaks, fire lines in. And I'm just wondering if you guys are on board with that, and if there are plans where you guys would maintain these to prepare for future fires.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there was a forest leadership team on Tuesday, and I ensured that the Chief 3 was part of this discussion when we're doing the rehabilitation. And we brought up that very thing of, some of these are pod lines, those potential operational delineation fire lines, as they're calling them these days, that are intended to be permanent. So we are going to be looking at overlays to see how that links up, and then come to some agreements, right? Which ones should we not rehab, meaning replant or close them off? But thank you. I appreciate that's a key opportunity as I see it at this point.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? So from the Shasta Trinity side, anything to add?
Good morning.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, can folks see me?
Yep.
I'm not used to Zoom. So, I've talked to a few of you and I, in other contexts, but I think this may be the first TCC meeting, full TCC meeting I've been to. I was detailed district ranger from March through June, and then I was back to my old job, and now I'm got the permanent. So I'm really happy to be here, and I wanted to share. There's a lot going on, as you can tell. Last time I checked, which was over a week ago, there were 270,000 acres of the northeast zone had burned, and the northeast zone of the August is pretty close to matching the South Fork Management Unit and the Shasta Trinity National Forest. So that's a lot of land, but not as much was affected as you might have thought. A handful of timber sales and NEPA projects were affected. The Texas spider sale that we've been working on for probably a decade was burned. The Dubakella insect disease project, just a little bit of that burned, and some of the West Side Plantation project burned. So we're looking at what we can do there, if anything. The pilot project, which I know you folks care a lot about, we actually have made a lot of progress and managed to streamline a lot of our analysis, such as different species analyses, to kind of get to the same point, but with excuse me.
So for now, why don't we stick to just the wildfire effects kind of stuff?
Sure. So that's what I can tell you about the effects. We know that we are going to need to. We know we're gonna need to deal with suppression repair. We know we're gonna need to deal with burned area emergency rehab. We've got a READ team and a BEAR team working right now. Unfortunately, with the downgrade to a Type 3 incident, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, and we're gonna have to put a lot of effort into that. Also, I'll echo what Carol said about those contingency lines. We are thinking about maintaining some of those in strategic locations. Now, I think not even just contingency lines, but actual, direct fire lines as well. I wanted to share with you some of the kind of cool work that we've been doing. And if I can share my screen, I have a oh, you disabled it. Okay.
I can go ahead and get that for you. Just 1 second. Go ahead.
Okay, and it's on the other screen, so I'm not sure this is going to work.
You just have to select the window.
Okay. All right. So do you see that picture there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Highway 36. And what happened was we worked with Caltrans. Normally, Caltrans in a kind of fire like this, what they would do is they would thaw their hazard trees, which they have every right to do. And then they would haul them to a processing site, and they would chip them all. And we got involved with them kind of early on and said, well, there's some really big trees out there. Is there any way that some of those really big trees that you're going to chip anyway could instead be sold as logs? And we went back and forth a little bit, and we're doing it. So they've set up this processing area along Highway 36 in what used to be, I guess, a temp scaling location. And they're pulling out some of the biggest logs for us to sell. And that's material that was going to be cut anyway. It was going to be hauled out anyway. There's going to be a lot of chips that are going to go back into the right of way. But some of those biggest logs are going to be saved and used for what I would think is definitely a better use. So we're doing that sort of thing along Highway 36. We're doing that sort of thing, or trying to do that, working with PG&E and TPUD on doing that sort of thing with other with utility lines. And it really just seems like a win-win because these are trees that are hazard, and they were coming down anyway.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay. So any questions for Chris?
Oh, I can add a couple other things, but we can.
Okay.
I'll go quick. We have some, definitely when it comes to hazards along Forest Service roads, we're thinking about that and working about that. And we're going to have a lot of discussion with the 6 rivers. We're talking about our forest supervisors are interested in working together on a fire recovery project, which would include hazard trees and and likely some area work, including salvage and fuels work and prescribed fire. And I just wanted to add, Lois couldn't be here. Lois, as you know, is acting deputy forest supervisor, and she's also eco staff officer. She wanted to let you know that we will be revisiting our fiscal year 2021 program of work in light of the fires, and we would like to work with you on defining what that would be.
Okay.
And then the last thing I'll just say, some interesting developments on the pilot project, but we can talk about that another day if now's
But
not.
we get a little bit later, we have updates on forestry projects.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So questions, comments for Chris and or Carol?
Yeah, this is Larry Glass. This is for Chris. I'm on South Fork Mountain. I'm in the Northwest Zone, but I'm in the South Fork Management Unit. So they drew the line sort of arbitrarily along the river. But anyways, Hidden Valley Road is what my concern is. I mean, thank God the Forest Service came in and saved all of our structures, but at the same time, the road's just tore up. So how do we go about getting the suppression repair on Hidden Valley Road?
So, I do work with suppression repair right now. Our read is Randy Paris, who's a South Fork employee. And, you're right, it was drawn a little haphazard, but honestly, I believe that's the only area where you were in the Northwest Zone. I think that's probably the only exception. And you are right, that area is in the Shasta Trinity, but on the Northwest Zone. So, I'm working, I didn't realize you lived out there, and that's good to know. And I'll definitely share that with the resource advisors. And, we'll see what we can do. But if there's any more specific information, just let me know if there's more specific information you need me to know, you can, get in touch with me offline.
Okay, I'll do that, Chris.
Dylan, you became visible. Do you have something in particular?
I think Tom had something first.
Okay, Tom. But yeah, it's hard to keep track.
Yeah, Chris, Tom Waltz. I was fortunate to be out on the South Fork by Forest Glen with TPUD, and we looked at getting the lines up there and stuff, but we also walked all the way back to the South Fork Trailhead into the bridge across the river there. Fortunately, the bridge survived. But a couple or a number of the culverts on that road, Summer Home Road, South Fork Mountain Road, are going to be undersized now, just based on seeing the no veg cover left and stuff. Is there a plan to turn, or at least under the Bear proposal, to get that road opened and get those culverts taken care of before winter here?
I haven't gotten that fine-grained into the details of the Bear. Certainly I can raise that with the team, just like I'm going to, raise the issue of Hidden Valley Road with the Reed team. So, thanks for mentioning that. Right now, I know on that, I think you're talking about the road with the recreation residences. Right now, we are working with TPUD on identifying, a way to get rid of the hazard trees. So we're definitely out there. Folks are out there. And so, I'll mention that. I'll definitely make sure to mention that to our watershed folks.
Hey, Pat, this is Judy. I don't know if people are just jumping in, or are you looking at our hands that we're raising?
I don't see any hands being raised.
I'm sorry, Judy. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just gonna, kind of touch base briefly on the county impact. Some of the issues were raised. we took a tour the other day. Rick and our staff and other staff members have been out in the field for many, many weeks. Many of you have heard probably the numbers. We've lost around 290 homes, over 500 in general structures. That does include the homes. And we certainly have incredible amount of road damage, along with that culvert issue. We recently just did get our federal designation, and that should certainly help with the amount of damage on county roads and culverts and such. And plus, of course, and I'm sure the erosion issue will be taken upon in the BEAR process. And I think, one thing maybe this group might want to think about is, in the past, we've had these local area advisors that started, if all of you recall, out of 2008 fires, where it just kind of went really crazy, and the public got pretty upset, and Supervisor Yeagle soon after brought this idea of folks locally helping the visiting teams, if you will, look at the landscape and where to direct fire. So that's something that, a lot of those folks that were on that list have retired, moved away. But it's something that might be helpful in helping our Forest Service partners as these fires happen. Initially, I think we learned in the field the other day, they had a handle, and then that huge wind event did come up, and that is out of everybody's control. But the local advisory is helpful. I saw it was helpful for me during the 17 fire for Helena. So I wanted to throw that out to the group as something to further discuss and maybe resurrect a new list of people. I don't know who's on the list anymore, but that might be helpful.
Judy, if I might add, we had a Fire Safe Council meeting yesterday, and the same issue came up.
Oh, good. Yeah. And like I
It was
said,
actually Forest Service person recommended that we needed to, kind of revisit who those local area advisors are and get a new list going too.
I've had, conversations, even though this is far from my district, I received a lot of comments in terms of when the smoke started rolling in and the public health issues around that. And at what point are we doing firing operations that really, where's the balancing between that? I realize that is important, but local area advisors can help with where those happen, and they know the landscape versus somebody from Colorado visiting, and we're grateful for their help, but it's helpful.
Great, thank you, Judy. So is there anybody who's up next?
Dylan?
Yeah, just real quick, I don't want to speak for Kristen Lark or Six Rivers, but you guys know that we do a lot of work down there, and it's been an overwhelming couple months for those folks in Southern Trinity. And I just want to assure everyone in this group that the Watershed Center is fully committed to assisting Six Rivers and Chastity in their restoration efforts. We currently have 4 people working as resource advisor trainees, and we also have quite a bit of CAL FIRE CCI money that was allocated to Six Rivers for multiple projects. CAL FIRE has said that they're still all in. They want us to do a modification and figure out how to best spend basically the $1.3 million that we have for Six Rivers in reforestation efforts and kind of what their priorities are. So the Watershed Center is fully committed to, assisting and helping out with this effort over the next 4 years.
Great, thank you, Dylan. So being sensitive to time, we probably could spend the whole 2 hours talking about this, but we probably need to move on unless anybody has anything else they wanted to bring up. Larry Glass, you had called me and said you had something else you wanted to mention.
Interestingly, it's right in line with comments that were made by Judy and Fortunately for us, or in my area here, Kristen Lark, who's the district ranger in the Mad River district there, was great about communicating with us, reaching out for local knowledge, and put me in contact with the Alaska team when they were running the show. And I was able to direct them to key holding features where they could do contingency lines. Anyways, I just wanted to give high praise to Kristen Lark for just going above and beyond, working on her days off to communicate with us out here who weren't getting much any kind of information at all back earlier in the fire. And she was great about that. So, Carol, if you want to tell Ted, high praise for Kristen Lark from all of us that live on South Fork Mountain.
Will do, Larry. Thank you. I sure she'll appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
That initial team, Larry, as you pointed out, has just been working like everybody over there, hours and hours, and Kristen was certainly a key point person over there. So glad you brought that up.
Great. Okay. So kind of moving on. So Jennifer Mata, kind of forestry issues from the BLM side of things.
Sure. How is everybody? Can you guys hear me okay?
Good.
Gonna see if I can do video, but my computer is not cooperating currently. Must be Friday. All right. So do you want me just to do all the BLM updates, or you want me to just stick to forestry, Pat?
Yeah. Why don't you just do all your updates?
Thanks. So a few things from the BLM. We will be getting a new district manager. Not sure anybody met our last one. His name was Alan Bittner. He took a new position in Colorado. So our assistant district manager, Derek Wilson's currently acting, but that job announcement behind him is out currently. So stay tuned for more information on a new district manager. We just signed an MOU with TPUD and Western Area Power to look at widening all of the rights of ways for TPUD and WAPA in Trinity County. So that project is ongoing. It's also with the Forest Service. So that project continues, and we're just starting the tribal consultation portion. So more to come when we get into the public scoping phase of that project. For fuels related or forestry related work, our foresters have been mostly still dealing with salvage on the campfire. And while we haven't had any fires of any significant size on BLM in Trinity County, we did have 3 large fires on our field office, 1 in Butte and 2 in the kind of eastern part of the western part of Tehama County, and then also the Zog fire. So we have been busy. My staff has been mostly busy dealing with those, from suppression repair to now trying to put ESNR plans together. But we did sign a DNA for the Lewiston Community Protection Project. It's about 237 acres. It's roadside work, property boundary type work, tied to our programmatic fuels and vegetation removal EA that's at the state level. So that was signed just recently. You might see people back out in Reading Indian Creek doing some more mechanical thinning. So we do have CAL FIRE crews back out there as they free up from fire assignments to do some more of that field work. And I'm not sure, Kelly, if you're going to touch on the NIFWIF funding on the Trinity County RCD updates.
Yes.
If you are, I'll leave that to you. And then really the last thing is we are starting to tiptoe back into our resource management plan. So we have a contract out currently to update some of our documents that we did when we initially started the resource plan a few years ago. Now that we've had large scale fire in the Reading field office, some of our analysis of the management situation and some of those other documents have to be updated. So we're starting back to update those projects with the goal of potentially kicking the RMP back off kind of full force in 2022, so fiscal year 22. So, yeah, I think that's it for BLM. Busy year,
Okay.
busy year.
So, public scoping and all that is yet to come, obviously, with the RMP update.
Correct. Yeah, not until at least 2022. So 21 will be us getting all of our kind of in-house data in order and getting some of the base documents that we, had done but now have changed in place. And then we would look to start to engage the public next calendar year. So yeah, we have a little while. Part of that is just because under the new planning regulations, we have a very short time to finish an RMP. And so we want to make sure that we have all of at least our internal ducks in a row before we go public, because once that notice of intent publishes, I think it's like 18 months to finish the entire document at that point.
Okay. And it's still going to be a joint effort with Arcata and Reading.
That's correct. Yep. Still the 2 field offices.
Anybody, any questions, comments for Jennifer? Nope. Okay. Go ahead, Kenneth.
Baldwin. I saw the Cal Fire truck out here yesterday. Yay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anybody had anything else? No? Okay. So do we have any updates other than we haven't been able to do anything because of the fires on the 2019 Joint Chiefs projects? That's kind of mostly Forest Service. I don't think we have NRCS with us today.
Nope.
So Chris, Losi, is that anything you've got anything on?
We do, and I don't have the list handy. I do know that the Dubakella project, which is an insect disease project primarily connected with plantations, but there's also some larger areas that we burned. So basically the idea is that we primarily focused on plantations, but where we had a cluster of plantations, we also decided, rather than trying to keep the fire in a plantation, we decided to let it burn to natural, natural barriers. So some work has been done on that, and I know that some of that work has come from some of that funding has come from the Joint Chiefs. I don't believe a whole lot of implementation has started, but I do think there may have been some line prepping and such. We do really hope to do some burning this fall. As you know, in the spring, because of COVID and because of the concerns that fire could cause respiratory issues, we halted our burning, but we are hoping to do some this fall if we can.
Okay. And Carol, do you have any information on that, or Stephanie from Trinity River Management Unit? I guess either of you guys.
Sorry.
So Carol from 6 Rivers.
Yeah, I don't have on that one, sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
You mean about projects
Joint
affected by the recent wildfires that were tied to Joint Chiefs funding?
No, just what status of Joint Chiefs projects this year?
Well, the Weaverville Community Forest Fuels and Recreation Project is tied to Joint Chiefs money. So I can give an update on that project if you guys want.
Sure.
So I'm not sure what has been shared in the past regarding that project.
A lot.
Okay, good. So you guys know it's a big project in the Weaver Basin. It's being split into 2 phases.
Yep, we already know that.
NEPA. So phase 1 NEPA, long story short, we expect to have a decision memo signed in December, and possibly some trail work can start in January. But Laura Graham and Tim Ritchie won't be able to start implementing any of the fuels work until potentially this spring.
You're really hard to hear.
Is this any better?
A little bit.
A little bit.
So decision memo for phase 1.
No.
Fading away.
You're fading away.
This any better? I'm like yelling in my computer now.
We all want to yell at our computers sometimes, so that's okay.
So the decision memo for phase 1 should be signed in December.
No, Stephanie, we can't hear you.
Sorry.
It's okay. Well, we just,
So if you want me to translate, I actually heard Stephanie fairly well. I believe what she said is that is that the decision memo for phase 1 will be signed in, did you say December?
yeah, we
Yes.
got that.
December.
Yeah, and some trails work would occur soon. The burning.
Could possibly in January at the earliest.
There you go. Trails work possibly in January, and prescribed fire possibly this spring.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chris.
Is that right? Did I get that, Stephanie?
You got it.
All right, we work
Okay.
as a team over here.
Good. Okay. So any questions for Stephanie? So when does, I guess the big question, I don't remember. So when does the Joint Chiefs expire? 2021 or 22? Do you know, Kelly?
21.
Okay. So we got one more
There's
field
the
season.
implementation seasons were 19, the calendar years for 19, 20, and 21.
Okay. Okay, so if nothing else on Joint Chiefs at the moment, so move on to other projects, things that have changed since we last met. We don't have anybody from NRCS. That would have primarily been the oak restoration project. Dylan, do you have anything that you can add to that?
Sure. We're working with 4 different landowners right now on the South Fork Trinity River. We're waiting. We'll get another allocation of funding for 2021. So our goal is to get another 4 landowners in. If anyone here is interested in oak woodland,
Now you're breaking up, Dylan.
Yeah, he's kind of frozen. Okay. So how about is there any action from the fuel break work group? Anybody, anything? No?
This is Chris. I'll make sure to have more information on that next time. I'm not really involved in that, but I can make sure to get some information on that for you guys, for you folks.
Okay.
I assume you're talking about the large programmatic fuel break work across the forest and the.
No, the fuel break work group is a small group that's been working on pilot project in the Shasta Trinity and first 48 acre wood, that sort of thing.
Although we would probably like to hear about that too, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can speak to pilot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, no, I've worked quite a bit with pilot, and I think we actually made some real breakthroughs in getting through some log jams when it came to analysis. We had some issues with some contractors that are no longer with us. So I think that's ultimately a good thing. And one thing that kind of happened that was kind of a big deal is that after we had done an initial preliminary BA that was sent to Fish and Wildlife Service, we got a comment that from Fish and Wildlife Service, we just want to make sure, saying to the effect, we just want to make sure that you realize that wherever the alcores are, we want you to, you're going to be moving your treatments around the landscape to reflect that. And what that meant, sorry, my dog is, basically what that meant is that wherever there was an alcore that moved, we would have different treatments in alcores, but then when an owl moved, we would also not only move the treatment, but the more restrictive treatment would travel with the alcore. such that basically wherever the Alcor is or was or will be in the future, that had more restrictive harvesting. And our silviculturists just looked at that and said, you know, we can't get anything economic out of here if every time the Alcor, every time an owl moves into an area that wasn't previously inhabited by an owl, we reduce our treatments. So we're going to go back. We're going back to Fish and Wildlife, and we're trying to figure out a solution, because to me, there's nothing worse than spending years on analysis only to find out, especially for a project like this, which was from the beginning was designed to you know, have an economic component. There's nothing worse than having a project like that become uneconomical after you know, half a decade of work. So you know, unfortunately, that is a bit of a hiccup, but I think it's kind of a necessary hiccup. And you know, we've received some initial positive responses from Fish and Wildlife, so we're just we need to work that through. And so on a more kind of uniformly positive note, I just wanted to share that as many of you know, the Hyam Palm Community Protection Project was scoped. And I just talked to Dan Ostman about that, and he had only great things to say about the Watershed Center and how much great work the Watershed Center is doing in initial surveys. Those initial surveys will really help us put together the treatments. So anyway, that's from Dan. So thank you to the Watershed Center for that. And that's, I think, those main ongoing non-fire related forest management projects.
Okay, great. Any questions for Chris?
This is Jerry. I have a question. So you were talking about the BA, and Scott Russell in previous meetings was talking about his conversations with Fish and Wildlife about a programmatic BA. What you were talking about, was there a connection to his conversations? And if so, can you give us an update if you know how those are going?
You know, I think they are separate, although I'm not 100% sure. I know there is a programmatic BA being discussed for, there's an idea to put fuel breaks across, at least across the west side, and there was talk about having a programmatic BA for that, if that's what you're referring to. This, I believe, is separate.
Okay, one other question. Chris, you said that you had some, I'm not sure of the words, but breakthroughs on the pilot program.
Yeah.
What were those?
Well, you know, we went through and we figured out that there were some analyses that we could really do, I think, with the same level of information, but with, you know, less work, less pages. You know, we were getting, I think we spent a lot of time getting to the core of why we're doing this and the questions we need to ask, and kind of getting back to basics. You know, I come from a NEPA background, so trying to get back to basics on what are we really analyzing here, what do we need to measure, how can we compare the alternatives. You know, I think Stephanie sat in enough meetings that she's probably sick of all these discussions, but you know, I think we made some real progress on just pushing through some of the roadblocks in terms of always analyzing 10 times more than we need to analyze when we really know what we care about. So let's just analyze those things. We'll analyze what we care about, what the public cares about, what our regulators care about, and you know, be efficient that way.
Sounds great. Look forward to seeing how that plays out.
Okay, great.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Any other questions for Chris? No? So the cross-boundary fuel break group, which is that more recently formed effort that involves the Forest Service, Watershed Center, SPI, BLM. They had been talking the last meeting. Joe Smales kind of updated a little bit on a project in the Bowerman Ridge area and one in Weaverville. So is there anything new to bring up on from that group without Joe being around anymore?
I don't have much.
Hey,
I don't have, yeah, go
this
ahead.
is Dylan. We are still waiting to get some more direction from Shasta T as far as the Bowerman Ridge fuel break NEPA. We're planning on starting that hopefully in the next month. And then we'll hopefully try to finish it within 12 months after starting it. So
That's
I
the
have the
NEPA,
Bowerman
right?
stuff.
That's the
Yeah.
NEPA for, yeah, okay. So I don't know if there's any overlap, but as far as some of your specialist kind of analyses, you know, the PUD's been all over the place up here on power line widening, so they may their consultants might have some information that could give you a jump start.
Hey, Pat, this is Keith with Sierra Pacific.
Yeah, Keith.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that a portion of, we have a project as well on Bowerman, and we've been working with the Forest Service as well, but we have a small part that fits well with our current proposal for timber harvest that we've done some groundwork on and we're prepared to submit. So there's some fuel break work that we're going to be doing, and it should match or help out and dovetail with the Forest Service one.
Cool, great, thank you, Keith. Okay, so I'm not sure, I think Chris has talked about most of the projects that he's aware of for Shasta Trinity. Stephanie, are there any other TRMU projects that we need to know about? That's new information. It's hard for you to know what's new because you weren't at the last meeting. Chris.
Can you guys hear me now at all? I've been typing into the chat box for Kelly to read my responses.
Yeah, Stephanie, you're still not coming through very well. She did, I asked her to write in the chat box if there was anything that she had to report out, and she said she had no new news on the Bowerman NEPA. She hasn't been involved or heard anything about it, and doesn't have any other specific things to add, unless we have a question about a specific project.
Okay. Right. With that, I think we can move to the RCD and Watershed Center. New since last meeting. So I guess you guys can do rock, paper, scissors, just decide who goes first.
I think actually, since I have Osley and since we're kind of focusing on forestry stuff, I could probably go on and on, but about everything that's been going on for the past couple of months. But I'll have Osley and Chris report out on the sort of reactions and changes in direction that we've had to deal with due to the fires and other projects that we are working on.
So we had been working with PG&E funding and working with Six Rivers in the Ruth area and the Mad River area, and planning to continue doing that until the August complex obviously occurred. And so we had to move our crews out of that area, of course. And so we've been doing some readjustment, and our work with the Six Rivers is on pause for now, and our crews have been reassigned under the PG&E funding downriver to Hawkins Bar, Trinity Village area. So our crews are currently working down there under PG&E funding. We've implemented in other areas under Fire Safe Council and State Water Resources Control Board funding since the last collaborative meeting as well. So treatment areas, really quick, have included top of the grade, Poker Bar, Lewiston, Jessup Gulch Road, and Deadwood Road since the last meeting, and some fee for service work. So the crews have stayed busy and thankfully been able to continue fuel reduction work despite the fires. So other current implementation not related to the cruise, we have brought on Kathleen McCauley, who's on this call, who's an AmeriCorps member in the Grizzly Corps program, who's working in the Forest Health Department, mainly here at RCD. And she is working on an assessment of the BLM side of the Weaverville Community Forest, as well as an update to the strategic plan for the community forest, which will cover 2020 through 2028. And if anybody is interested in being involved in the strategic plan update, we are planning to hold roughly monthly meetings about it. And anybody is welcome to attend if you have an interest in the Weaverville Community Forest and want to have a say in its direction over the next 8 years. You can feel free to email me. My email is on the RCD website if you don't already have it. And we are also holding a Weaverville Community Forest public meeting open to anybody that's going to be on Zoom on October 28th in the evening, 5:30 to 7:30. And you can find the Zoom link at the TCRCD website for the Weaverville Community Forest. So that's tcrcd.net/WCF. And all the Zoom information is there. So hope to see some of you there. That is the main broad strokes of implementation. In terms of recent awards, we were awarded a grant through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation in collaboration with BLM to do, it was about $165,000 to work in the Reading Creek, Indian Creek area and do fuel reduction, hand piling, and or cutting and hand piling. We were also in the process of finalizing agreements with TPUD to do some power line clearing work in various areas this year. And sorry, that implementation on that National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant in Indian Reading Creek area is slated to probably start next year and finish up next year as well. So that'll all be 2021. And so that's our implementation and our recent awards. And then in addition to that, we've been working on some pre-proposal scoping and looking into other opportunities like the NRCS Regional Conservation Partnership Program, potentially something that we could apply to in collaboration with other entities and other counties, either this year or next year, to get some funding for wildfire severity mitigation and post-fire recovery in Trinity County, since we so clearly need it. That's all I have off the top of my head.
Great, thank you, Osley. Any questions for Osley? No? How about Dylan, Watershed Center?
Yeah, things the August complex obviously affected us quite a bit. We do a lot of work in the South County. We had the opportunity, most of our guys hopped on the opportunity to be emergent or 80 higher firefighters for Six Rivers. So, I think the last update, we were kind of getting ready to get into some marking on rat tail and stuff like that. And, obviously all that stuff's been kind of on hold. We've been assisting Six Rivers with their suppression efforts over the last 4 weeks. We now have guys working as fire line resource advisors and just trying to help out Six Rivers any way we can. Everyone's kind of spread thin right now. Our saw crews continued. We pulled our saw crews off of, the Southern Trinity work, repurposed them on some work on the Sims project in High and Palm. And they're continuing the roadside fuel breakdown there, and also working on defensible space work in Hayfork and High and Palm for private landowners. We did receive a grant from the Fire Safe Council. It's our our Hayfork Community Protection Phase 2 project. Our current project ends this December, so we're real happy to get some more funding, about $150,000, to continue our defensible space ingress and egress work in Hayfork, High and Palm, And this new project includes the communities of Mad River and Van Dusen. So we are looking forward to continuing that work with our SAW crews. Other than that, the pilot project has been sort of on a hold for us, but I've talked to some folks on the Shasta Trinity side, and they're ready to start moving forward on doing the official GPS and boundary delineation in terms of like officially marking the trees and stuff like that. That's probably a little ways out, but they do want to, we're moving forward on the pilot project. We'll start the rat tail stuff up again here in a couple weeks, I hope. And we, we are also working on the High and Palm project, collecting stand inventory data. So slowly starting to get back to work here, but definitely not a lot was accomplished in the last couple months besides, suppression efforts and just hoping that everyone stays safe.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Dylan. Any questions for Dylan?
No, Pat, this is Judy. I just have a follow-up question to my earlier comment, if I may.
Sure.
So, I think this is kind of very apparent to everybody, but the other thing this group might want to think about maybe at the next meeting is to reiterate our message as we have in the past. For, one thing we see with these fires is lack of resources for our federal partners. And then as obviously more fires go out through California, resources are limited. And also I wanted to clarify my earlier statement. I didn't want to minimize the concern from folks over here just from smoke. Obviously, the whole county got hit with smoke, but also, concerned about the 2,000 head of cattle that were killed and the timberlands that were lost. So again, back to the point of having extra resources for our partners and then also the local area folks to help direct some of those fuel operations or help give information. So that was it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Judy. Okay, anything else on the forestry issues? We're actually almost on schedule. We have, just as a reminder for folks, we have a presentation that starts at 11:30 on the Trinity Alps to Castle Crags Pacific Crest Trail acquisition project. So I want to try to keep ourselves on schedule for when they join us here shortly. So if nothing else, so other committees, Cannabis Committee, is there anything new to bring up on the Cannabis Committee?
Hey, Pat, this is Keith with Sierra Pacific.
Yeah, Keith.
I'm sorry, as you're winding down on forestry issues, I just wanted to mention to you that just a brief observation on the fires was that, and I know that resources were limited, but I wanted to give a little praise to the Shasta Trinity, who we had lightning as well as the Mendocino, and they were responsive in nailing down the ones that they could control and keep small, because when your resources are limited, as they get bigger, it gets harder to have enough resources to control them. And when you have a series of fires that start small and then they become a complex, and then you have 1 million acres, that's just too many acres with extreme fuel and hazard and weather conditions to have a positive result. That's not to say everything is negative, but when you have these kind of conditions and you have 1 million acres, that's a significant loss. And I feel fortunate that a good portion of our county was not hit anywhere near as hard as some of the other counties affected by the August complex.
Great. Thank you, Keith. I think that it is important. I guess a quick question for in the August complex and stuff, what all did you guys lose?
Well, we were very engaged from the beginning because of the size. And if you have people from out of the area and they're unfamiliar and unprepared with a wind event coming, that fire is going to burn that long. You're going to get some of the southwest winds, and you're going to get, which is the normal pattern. and then you're going to get some of the east winds, and that's just where it blows out like a big piece of broccoli. It's always going to pooch out somewhere. So our timberland did not get affected very much by the August complex. The Zog fire was closer to some of our Reading district. We lost in other parts of the state, but August complex, we had one section that had burned around and one section that had burned through, and it's 100% loss.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Larry Glass.
Yes. What did
Your
you
little
want?
your little box lit up, so I thought you might have something to say.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Hey, this is Jerry. I have a question, kind of maybe a tangential one, but there's been several mentions and references to the PUD right-of-way project in the conversations. And I was wondering if Tom might have an update on that and what the status is. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess I am. Sorry, Tom.
So Tom.
Maybe he's not sitting there anymore.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I can get with Tom offline, and we can maybe send out a note to everybody on an update.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and we'll put it on the next agenda for sure. Okay, so Cannabis Committee, anything, Susan, Kelly, anything there?
Well, I would say that the firefighters did a monumental job of protecting Trinity Pines, which was part of an evacuation order, but people didn't go because of harvest time for their product. And they were preserved for it. The firefighters really did quite a job of protecting Trinity Pines.
Okay.
So that's, you know, and a lot of that, of course, is not legal grow.
Right.
So, you know, that's a mixed bag, but it was something to see all the effort that they mustered on that behalf. And
Okay.
Carol Fall has did she have some sort of, I thought that she had a report with Bowerman and.
Bowerman.
Which you
Hi,
mentioned.
guys. So, no, I mean, since the last meeting, they did issue notices to the grows on Bowerman Ridge, but I have not heard whether or not they are in compliance and if county council has decided to prosecute or whatever the next compliance step is. So maybe we can ask Tim for an update before the next meeting on all those projects at Bowerman. And since Joe's not here, I'm not sure that, and because of the fire, I'm not sure that the Forest Service has been able to follow up on the issue of the roads, since it's a shared use road, and what kind of fees they might be able to collect or enforcement. So it's still kind of unknown where that one's at.
Okay. I think one thing that did happen since the last meeting is that Tim Saxon and the Sheriff's Department got a more accurate map of the boundary of the NRA. So I think that helped them to some degree. Okay, how about Recreation Committee? We lost Amanda, unfortunately, who was representing the NRA. We had a Recreation Committee meeting way back in early September. So I'm not sure what updates there were from there. Nothing really significant, I don't think. Biggest concern that I recollect was just concerns over getting the engineering done for the Minersville boat ramp and parking, and getting that done in a timely enough manner to allow it to go to contract and get built within the time frame of the grant from Department of Boating and Waterways. And that was looking pretty iffy. And if that wasn't going to happen, the Forest Service was going to apply or work with DBOW on getting an extension to that grant. I think that, and then there's the ever ongoing houseboat permit issue, which is not getting particularly closer to resolution. That's probably the main thing. So I don't know if anybody else other than Carol was part of that, and Kelly was part of that meeting. No.
Well, they did say that under the, I can't remember the name of it now, the land and water bill that just passed.
Oh, yeah,
They got a substantial amount of funding. And it had to be for essentially this fiscal year had to be for projects ready to go, projects on the shelf. So things like, I think replacing the roof at Bowerman Barn was one of them. There was some other trail maintenance kind of things.
Trail reroutings.
And then basically they're expecting another chunk of money. So they're gonna be going through trying to prioritize which projects they need to get the environmental documentation done for the next funding round. But they got a lot of money, which is great.
Yeah, I think the barn project alone was 250,000. So, okay. So we've got a few minutes before Brenda Tracy, Megan Wargo, and John Bernstein join us to talk about the Trinity Alps to Castle Craig's project. So anything else while we're waiting for them to log in? Anything else they want to bring up? Maybe we could use this time to talk about agenda building.
Well, I had requested an update on the alert wildfire cameras, which I know we weren't able to get to this time, but so maybe for the next time we could talk about the alert wildfires, if we could get an update. I'm sure, you know, that would have come in handy with the fires.
Okay. Well, Kenneth.
What?
No, your little box lit up.
Oh, it shouldn't have. I'm doing something else while we're everybody's talking.
Yeah, of course. So what other, so I guess here's even a more fundamental question. So our normal schedule for meetings would September, which we moved to October. And our next regularly scheduled meeting would be November. Do we still want to meet third Friday in November? Or shift that to December?
January.
Anybody, any other thoughts? I mean,
I'm fine with next month.
With a November meeting, and then we'd have a January meeting.
Yeah, December was a tough time to have a meeting, and it'd be good to hear a month from now what's been going on with post-fire rehab.
Yeah, that's
stuff.
true. Waiting till January is a long time.
This is Chris here. I'd like to second that, and I'd like to say that, you know, we really are looking towards you to. We really would like to hear some of your thoughts about, you know, post-fire recovery, and we don't want to get too far down a road where, you know, your input wouldn't be helpful. So I think it would definitely be useful to have some discussions quickly. You know, we value the partnership that we have, and we want to make sure that we're you know, that we're responsive to your concerns before we've already embarked on a path, too far on a path. So
Okay.
definitely.
So if we do November, it would be November 20th.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Chris and Larry about November 20th. There's a lot going on, and I appreciate wanting the collaborative's input. So I may not be able to join the whole meeting, but I think it's important for the group to get together and get an update.
So would a discussion on the resource advisors be an agenda item?
Oh, that wouldn't hurt either.
Okay.
I did
try not to load it up too much because a 2-hour meeting, isn't all that long. So that's
Right.
probably plenty to post-fire recovery, alert wildfire cameras, resource advisors, and then the usual stuff probably is a meeting.
And just to sort of put it out there, I had a discussion with Nick Goulet earlier this week. And one of the things that we were discussing was, and this may be too early to make any kind of call about when this might happen, but obviously we had a field tour about a year ago to First 48 to see how some of those treatments, were looking on the ground. And it came across in our discussion that it might be of interest to the collaborative to have another field tour out to that area to have a look and see how, those treatments actually did. So just to put it out there.
I'll let Kristen Lark know that and put it on a radar.
Okay, and I obviously it's got to be safe to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm seeing Megan Wargo with the Pacific Crest Trail Association has joined us. Haven't seen Brenda yet or
John Bernstein.
Megan, welcome.
John Bernstein is on the line as well.
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Okay, cool. Okay. And so Brenda be the last person that we need. Need to get on here. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining us today.
Sure. I haven't talked to you in a while, quite a long time.
No, it's been a long time. So.
I think
Okay.
Brenda's waiting. Hold on, Brenda's about to come on.
Okay, cool. And Megan, it's good to see you again. I think the last time I saw you, you were headed up to Oregon to watch the full eclipse of the sun.
That is a really good memory, and I made it.
Yeah.
It was smoky, but still pretty cool.
Cool. Okay, so we got Brenda flashing on and off, not quite here yet. So Brenda, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I'm experimenting with my video. For some reason, it won't stick on, but I'm here.
Okay. Well, actually, so this agenda item came to us. Judy Morris asked to have this on the agenda. And so we've got a half hour, and I know Megan, you've got I think a leave promptly at 1.
I do. So sorry to run.
No. So I'm just gonna turn it over to Brenda to take the lead, and you guys got your kind of plan of approach. So kind of take it away.
Yay, we've got it. Thank you very much, Pat. And thanks, Kelly, for pulling the map up on the screen. So good morning, everybody. My name is Brenda Tracy, and I'm the Public Services Staff Officer and the Lands Officer for the Shasta Trinity National Forest. And woohoo, we made it to the meeting. We've been looking forward to this meeting since the September 18th meeting was postponed due to wildfires, and we're glad to finally be here. And we're here today to share with you information about the PCT Trinity Alps to Castle Crags land acquisition project. And we've got a lot of information to share with you today. And as Megan will share with you, we've got opportunities to ask questions along the way. But before we get started, I would like to introduce to you formally our partners, some very strong partners of the Forest Services. And they have worked with us on different land acquisition projects, most notably the Trinity Divide land acquisition, which was completed in 2019. Woo-hoo. And we're currently working with them on a couple of other acquisitions as well. And so without further ado, I know that Pat's already been talking a little bit to John and Megan, but I'd like to formally introduce to you John Bernstein with the Trust for Public Land. So hello, John.
Hey, Brenda.
And we were hoping, John, you'd tell the group just a little bit about your role with TPL, and then we'll move on to introducing Megan.
Oh, sure. Well, really quickly, you know, TPL, Trust for Public Land, is a national nonprofit, but we're very, very active in California, and that's where we started in 1972. Our interest is mostly in creating land for the public to use for recreation, for economic development, and for all the other things that the public uses land for. We're divided up geographically. I'm the guy who does pretty much the north coast of California and the northern mountains. So this is in the middle of my turf.
Yay, John, thank you very much. And I'm glad you could make it today. And we're happy to have TPL as a partner for the Forest Service. Thank you. Okay, so next I'd like to introduce Megan Wargo. Megan works for the Pacific Crest Trail Association. And Megan, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role?
Yeah, so I'm the Director of Land Protection with Pacific Crest Trail Association, and we are the primary nonprofit partner for the public agencies in kind of the management, protection, and promoting of the Pacific Crest National Scenic Trail. So with that, as Brenda kind of alluded to, I'll give you a quick overview of what we were going to talk about today, and then we can kind of jump into our presentation. And first, just kind of like to echo kind of Brenda's sentiments of thank you for having us today. We're excited to get to actually share this project with you. So we're going to start off and give you all an overview of the project and the details. And then we're going to take a quick pause after that to allow a few minutes for questions and answers. Then we'll talk about kind of the project status and opportunities along with the project. And again, then we'll pause and work in some other questions and answers. And then finally, we'll talk about kind of the timeline and next steps. And we'll wrap it up with additional time for questions and answers. We were hoping to kind of allow some question answer throughout the presentation, especially given this virtual format, so that there's an opportunity to pause for that. And with that, yep.
Real quick, besides the map share that Tracy asked me to put up, did you need to share your screen or anything? Did you have anything else related materials wise for your presentation?
We don't. We're keeping it simple with the virtual format. Thank you.
I'll leave
so
it
with
up
that,
then.
Yep, I'm gonna turn it over to John, who is gonna do a little intro to the project details.
Hey, thanks, Megan. But before we do that, Brenda, did you want to provide a brief explanation of why we didn't come in front of this committee before, and what, you know, and why we're doing it now, or do you want to hold off on that?
Well, I will simply say that I believe that Joe Smales mentioned this project or introduced this project to the collaborative. I'm thinking it might have been back in July. And shortly thereafter, he tried to get us on the agenda so that we could come in and provide you with some more detailed information. And the meeting in September that we were hoping to attend was rescheduled. I understand, Pat, that was a result of our forest supervisors for the Six Rivers and the Shasta Trinity National Forests requesting to postpone the meeting due to the fact that we have been juggling and responding to so many wildfires that are currently burning on the national forests in California. So we had hoped to get here earlier, and as you'll see, I'll share some updates for you in terms of where we are with this project, but we're happy to be here today. So thank you very much, John.
Okay, Brenda. Well, I'll go ahead with, unless there are any other questions, with just a quick overview. So, Trust for Public Land has been working with Sierra Pacific Industries for probably 20 years now, and we've gotten on on very kind of friendly terms with them, and every once in a while, we realize that there are some outlying tracts of land that probably aren't that interesting to them, aren't very good as far as timberland, and have other maybe higher and better uses for public use. And gosh, it's probably, well, 9 months ago, maybe, or something, yeah, even something like that. I was doing a bunch of mapping work, which I do for TPL, and I realized that on the Pacific Crest Trail, there were a number of parcels that SPI owned that would probably be better used for the Pacific Crest Trail. Although, of course, you know, there's a very narrow easement along those, you probably know, along those parcels. The trail is on, if I'm correct, a 20-foot wide right-of-way. So if you go more than 10 feet off the trail, theoretically you're trespassing, not a great idea. Anyway, we'd worked with SPI for so long that we went to them and we said, you know, you own some parcels up there and you own some other parcels adjacent to the Trinity Alps Wilderness, have some trailheads on them. Would you be interested in selling them? And they thought about it for a while. They had not thought about that before, but eventually they came back to us and said, yes, we're willing to sell, or at least consider selling, 15 parcels. And you can see those on your map. It's a little small on my screen, but it looks like they're nicely crosshatched. And they all follow the trail or are adjacent to wilderness areas. And we can talk about those. So we ended up with 15 parcels totaling 7,500 acres, more or less, of which 10 parcels and about 6,000 or 6,100 acres are in Trinity. I should point out that SPI and other timber companies continue to own hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres in Trinity. So this is, you know, kind of a way below 1% of what they own. And so we've worked along with SPI to move ahead on thinking about acquiring these parcels. They're pretty interesting in a lot of ways. They are alpine. They're not really very productive timberland. The last time SPI was in there, as far as we can make out, was before 2000. They include some important trailheads that let you get into the hiking network on the Pacific Crest Trail and in the Trinity Alps Wilderness, one called the Tangle Blue Trailhead. There's another trailhead to the north, which maybe Brendan knows the name of. And there's a lot of connections to the Pacific Crest Trail because the Pacific Crest Trail crosses that. I'll only mention two other things, which may be of interest to the collaborative. We did a quick estimate of the kind of taxes, property taxes, that these parcels are paying annually to the county, and I guess partly to the state. And it's somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. So we'd submit not a huge amount of money. Finally, we are lucky that we've been able to interest a private foundation in paying for a lot of this. So a lot of this, the cost of these parcels will not come from public money, but will come from a private foundation that's willing to fund something like a little more than $5 million of the purchase. The foundation is particularly interested in parcels that go to wilderness. So what we're talking about there are the parcels that are adjacent to the Trinity Alps and Castle Crags wildernesses, which you see in green on this map. So I guess I'll let it stop there and either ask for questions or let Megan continue.
Yeah, we'll pause for questions, and I don't know how your group usually does it, but we're happy to take them verbally, or I can watch the chat too if people have questions that come up throughout. But let's pause here a second and see if there are any questions just about the specifics and details of the parcels that we're looking at. And we will get into a little bit more of the kind of status and timeline of the project after.
So I have a comment and a question.
Yeah, please.
So you mentioned the loss of the property taxes, roughly $3,000 a year, but there's also the loss of the timber tax revenue that should be included in the computation. In the Michigan, California purchase, you know, just the off the cuff, I think it came to around $6,000 a year when you included property taxes and the loss of the timber receipts. in addition, the county or the landowner is getting pays at a subsidized rate because this is timber production zone land. And so they pay at a reduced rate. And all that tax revenue vanishes when it's sold to the federal government. So the county really takes a hit in that regard, just in taxes. And I'll just stop there for now.
You know, I can say something about that. I think you're right. In fact, you're absolutely right about the timber tax. Of course, the Michigan, California project was considerably bigger than this one, and that's why there's the difference, part of the difference there. But if I'm correct, and you may know more about this than I do, the timber tax is only paid when there's a harvest, right? The next these harvests in this very low site, relatively unproductive land can tend to occur every 40 to 50 years. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that timber tax actually comes into the county that often.
They get a portion of it, but the key is that it's a subsidized rate based only when they harvest. So if it wasn't TPZ, they would pay at a higher rate based on the value of the land. But I think we've got Sierra Pacific on board here. Maybe they could tell us the last time more precisely how much of this land they've harvested in the last 20 years or so.
This is Keith with Sierra Pacific. I'm fairly new to the district, so I can't give you that kind of information offhand, but I can tell you that our pattern of harvest has been one of entering a watershed roughly on a 10-year cycle. So that's the revenue stream. I would say that perhaps the word subsidy or subsidized taxation is maybe something somebody might understand differently. Yield taxes is the way that's been determined to best tax timberland because it changes the way that people manage the ground. And so if it's based upon when the timber is harvested, that's the time when the landowner gets a revenue stream that can be taxed. Whereas if you're taxing at the standard rate that maybe others might have for other land uses, like say commercial buildings and things like that, then what it encourages people to do is to harvest the trees so that they don't get taxed anymore. So the yield tax has been the way that's been in place for a long time. But I just wanted to say that the timberland up there is, we've been up there and we continue to manage it, and we manage for these other resource values that we recognize and others recognize. And so if there's a wildlife species, whether it be botanical or avian, or we've got a Pacific Crest Trail or other scenic values, we manage for those and have continued to manage for those with or as we own them. So we'll continue to manage them. It's just responsible of us to, if someone shows an interest in the purchase, I need to make that available to, as a forester, to the landowners to then make a decision based upon the appraisal and the offer. And so that's pretty much, I would say, my status and understanding of it to this point. And I can contribute later as well as if necessary.
Thank you, Keith. That was great.
So I have a question. So I was looking at the map that was sent out earlier, and the purple squares, the ones that you're proposing to buy, make sense. That they're adjacent to wilderness and things like that. But I was looking at all the white squares, the private land, and so it's kind of a two-part question. There are some of the sections where you're proposing to buy the part that is outside of the corridor, and then the rest of the private land that is within the corridor is not proposed to be purchased. So I was wondering if that was because it was a different landowner. And then I was wondering if there are other SPI tracts, all these other white blocks within the corridor that SPI owns that they're not currently interested in selling. So I'm just curious about what isn't being offered for sale.
or contemplated for purchase?
So this is John. I can start that, and I'm sure Keith will want to say something on that. There are some little blocks that sort of logically could be included in this project, but they're not owned by SPI. There are some that are owned by the Roseburg successor, which is called New Forests, and there are some that are just owned by people who have vacation homes or cabins on them.
Okay, and are there SPI blocks within the corridor that are not being offered for sale?
Are you talking about the corridor around the Pacific Crest Trail?
Yeah, on the map that you sent out.
Yeah, so I can answer that. No, this covers all of the land here in Siskiyou and Trinity County that's within the PCT corridor that SPI owns.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That answers my question.
Great. And we did get a question in the chat, which was asking from Jerry Cousins, asking if it's too soon to identify the foundation. And yes, Jerry, right now the foundation has asked to be an anonymous donor. So that is stuff that we need to keep confidential at this point.
So I think I'm not sure that Carol got all the answer. So there are those parcels, actually, I guess they're closer to the Castle Crags Wilderness, that the portion being identified for purchase sale is a portion of the section, but outside the actual corridor. The third it looks like it's a little more than a quarter of a section or something like that. So is that because the rest of that section is not SPI ground?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Great. Any other questions at this point?
Jerry had a question in the chat that asked about whether it was too soon to identify the foundation.
Megan already addressed that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We got that one. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all right. Thank you.
Sorry.
Great. Well, I think we'll move on. I'm going to turn it to Brenda, who's going to talk a little bit about the status of the project. And like I said, we'll take another pause for more questions. And if they pop up in your head, put them in the chat if you want to, and we can get them then too.
Okay, hello again, everybody. So the status of this project. This project is moving fast. It's really moving a little faster than we anticipated and than we're comfortable with in most cases. But what I will tell you here, John mentioned a little bit about the potential for private funding. And the private funder has also indicated that they are willing to contribute the funding, as John mentioned, but they also require a match. So they require matching funding. They don't want to be the sole funder of a project like this. And as John mentioned, they're really only interested in the parcels that are adjacent to a wilderness area that could potentially be added to a wilderness area. And so we typically, the Forest Service and other federal agencies have opportunities to apply for land water conservation fund funding for federal land acquisitions. And the Great American Outdoors Act was recently passed. It's the Great American Outdoors Act of 2020. And it was passed earlier this summer. And what it did was provide permanent authorization and funding for the Land Water Conservation Fund. And so consequently, our agency started contacting regional offices and asking if there were any other potential partnership projects that might be added to the FY, and FY is fiscal year, to the FY 21 project list to compete for Land Water Conservation Fund funding. And so, of course, our regional office participated in the kickoff call for this project, and we have a long-standing partnership with the Trust for Public Land and Pacific Crest Trail Association. So our regional office reached out to us and said, what do you think about submitting this project for 2021 Land Water Conservation Fund funding? And so it required us to move a whole lot faster than we were originally willing to and thought we would be moving. But we were able to, thanks to our partners and others, we were able to pull together a proposal, and we submitted it just this past Tuesday. That's why we have a little bit better map to share with all of you. And so we have already submitted a funding request for partial funding for this project. So the current status, just to be clear, is that, I hate a lack of clarity, is that we have a private donor who's willing to contribute funding, and we have requested Land Water Conservation Fund Act funding. And then those two sources of funding combined, if we're successful in getting matching funding, would be used to acquire these public lands, or these private lands that will become public lands, excuse me. So that's the current status. And again, we had hoped to be able to come in and talk to you all a bit about this project before we submitted a funding request. However, the circumstances just simply didn't allow us to do that, and it required many late nights to be able to pull together this proposal so it could be added to the 2021 project list that will be evaluated by Congress, and Congress will authorize, they'll confirm the project list, and they will authorize funding. So we don't know how this project is going to fare. All we can say is that we have a proven track record of success with these partners and acquiring lands in this area. So that's the current status.
Thanks, Brenda. And as we get into opportunities, I might just speak from kind of the PCT perspective. As you can see on this map, it cuts off a little bit when you get up into the arc and the bend of the PCT that's at the northern end of where this map cuts off. That's where the Trinity Divide project that we completed last year and had spoken with the collaborative about in previous meetings was completed. And really there's a couple of parcels in this stretch, but if you kind of connected the Castle Crags Wilderness all the way over the Trinity Alps Wilderness, that's about a 50-mile stretch of the PCT. And what's kind of exciting about this project is, aside from some smaller land ownerships in there, this really could create a fully protected corridor for the PCT through that area and that 50 miles. And we have good partners. We love working with the private landowners to maintain the trail through private lands, but this does open up the opportunity for the trail users to just get out and spread out and have public land adjacent to the trails throughout that whole stretch, kind of allowing for more recreational opportunities of camping places and just spreading out. And the other thing I'm going to turn over to Brenda is just to talk a little bit about one of the other recreational trails that there's an opportunity around this project.
So you also, Megan, you got another question on the chat.
Okay. Okay, so our question is from Jerry about whether he had missed it or if we had said a total purchase cost. And we don't actually have a number specifically because we have not done the appraisal work yet. As Brenda said, this is moving quick. So we have put an estimate out there just based on previous land transactions like the Trinity Divide. But, you know, I may defer to John and SPI. I think probably since we don't have an appraisal, we don't want to throw out guesses on someone else's land.
Fair enough.
I think, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I think that's probably the way to go at this point.
Yeah. So we did, Brenda, maybe before I get to you, we did have another question pop up in the chat here about how many people use this section of the PCT. And that's a great question that I wish we had a good answer to. I know that we were working with the Forest Service and did some trail counters up in the Trinity Divide project area 3 years ago. And within a month span, kind of going from mid-July to mid-August, They had, I think it was 4,000 plus counted, which could be some in and out counting the same people. But honestly, we can count and keep track of the people that get long distance permits on the PCT. And those are people planning to do 500 miles or more. In 2019, which the hiking season got a little messed up based on COVID, but there were over 7,000 long distance permits, which are mostly people looking to through hike. So that would be 7,000 alone, looking to do the entire trail. And there's so many access points along the PCT through this area. 7,000 people, yes. And unfortunately, we just can't, there's no way for us to monitor the day use and kind of weekend or longer backpacking, week-long backpacking trips that start and go through this area. Because there are so many access points, we just don't have a way to count that. But we think that actually the 7,000 sounds like a little bit of a large number, but the people using and planning to do a trip along the whole trail is probably a very small percentage of those that are actually out there and enjoying the PCT. All right, with that, Brenda, do you want to talk about the Tangle Blue Lake Trail?
You bet I do. Hey, Kelly, I'm wondering if do you have a cursor that you can use on this map?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that's okay. I think I can talk people through it. So I was talking to Pat yesterday.
Let me try something different real quick.
Okay.
Just as a try here. I'm going to unshare that and then reshare.
I was going to say, you're looking good, Kelly. We can see you.
Okay, I'm actually going to share the screen that has, where did that go?
While you're working on the tech here, I will say just quickly, I'm going to have to jump off in the next couple of minutes, and I apologize for that. But you can reach out to me if there are any specific questions about the project and the PCT. I'd be happy to follow up with others if questions come up that I'd be better suited to answer after I have to drop off.
Okay, so Megan, just so that I have it, if you wouldn't mind resending your email so I can get that out to everybody.
Sure, and I'll put that in the chat too.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm sharing the screen that has can you see my cursor moving around at all?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Kelly. And Megan, if you have to go while I'm in the middle of talking, thank you very much. We all appreciate the fact that you're here and that you're such a strong partner and that you're such a great advocate for the Pacific Crest Trail. Woohoo!
Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, thank you, Megan.
Okay, so we're talking a little bit about opportunities here, and I was talking to Pat yesterday afternoon, and Pat mentioned to me that he had received a couple of emails from people who said they were having difficulty orienting themselves to these parcels because the original map we had didn't have very many designators on it, and so this map is better. It has Highway 3 on it, and it has some other features, but it doesn't have things like the Tangle Blue Trailhead, doesn't have Masterson Meadows, doesn't have some of the great recreation areas that will be benefited from this acquisition. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a trails project, a trail reroute project that is planned for the Tangle Blue Trail. And I think it's important to try to point out where that is here so that you can see how this acquisition and this opportunity plays into that. And so the Tangle Blue Trailhead, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's accessed from Highway 3. And on the map that you've been sent, there you go. So Kelly's got his cursor, and that black line, that's the access road into the Tangle Blue Trailhead. And the Tangle Blue Trailhead is right there in section 19. And the trailhead is actually on SPI land. And of course, we didn't know that when that was established at the Tangle. We didn't know that when the trailhead was established, but there you have it. You know, use patterns, flat spots by the creeks, just sort of acted like a magnet, and people started using that area as a trailhead. So it became a very unimproved trailhead. There's currently simply a bulletin board there that provides people with information. And so the Tangle Blue Trail is a fairly popular trail, but not nearly as popular as Stewart Fork, Swift Creek, Canyon Creek, etc. But we are finding, especially this year with COVID, that there has been a large influx of people coming to this area and really branching out to more remote areas of the forest. And in fact, I went out there on a Wednesday and there were 7 cars in the parking lot. And I thought, oh, holy cow, use is really increasing out here. So Tangle Blue is becoming a more popular trail. And as I mentioned, the trailhead is in section 19, which is currently SPI land. And there's an old railroad feature there that's currently used as a bridge. And the Forest Service, especially now that we know that's SPI land, we don't have any authority to improve the trail on private property. However, we do have a trail reroute and improvement project plan for the rest of the Tangle Blue Trail to Tangle Blue Lake, the portion that is on National Forest System lands. And we were actually planning to start the project in 2021. And we still hope that we'll still move forward with the project, but the start date may be delayed a little bit because most of our field going personnel had to take most of this year off due to most of this field season off due to the fires. But we've been planning this reroute project that was supposed to start in 2021, and it was going to be a 3-year project. And so we talked about this project, this acquisition project the other day, and we talked about the timeline associated with it. And we figured that if things go well, if we receive the funding from the private donor, if we receive the matching funding, it will likely take about 2 years to complete the transaction. And so that would provide us time. We'd have people out there working on the trail from the private land boundary to the lake, but that would also provide us with a wonderful opportunity to work on the trail and do some rehabilitative work on the trail through SPI land if it is indeed transferred to the forest by that time. So I just wanted to share with people a real-time opportunity that's coming up. And it's an opportunity for different partners and volunteers to get engaged in actually maintaining and restoring the area around that trail. And, you know, there are a bunch of different studies and you get different numbers no matter what study you look at. But the most recent study that I have seen numbers for indicated that in the state of California, outdoor recreation contributes about $20 billion to the statewide economy. And so we have more and more people that are coming to these areas, more and more people that want to visit and embrace their public lands. And so opportunities like this provide us with an opportunity to provide more and better recreation opportunities. So I just wanted to point out that Tangle Blue Trailhead and the section that it was in, you know, and talking with Mike McFadden, who's very familiar with this area, he talked also about the fact that this acquisition would open up premier camping opportunities in Lower Masterson Meadows. And Kelly, I'm not sure if you know where that is. It is section 3 up north of Highway 3. Can you see section 3? Yeah, you're almost there. Keep going a little bit to your right. Whoa, yeah, right there. So Lower Masterson Meadows, it would open up that area for camping. That's a very popular area. It would open up the headwaters of Miller Creek, and Miller Creek flows into section 7. And it looks to me like the headwaters are in section 5, which Kelly just passed that section 7. Miller Creek comes into section 7. And then up there around section 5, that strip of land, that area right there is right around the Scott Summit. That's the Scott Mountain Summit. And as you can see, the PCT crosses right through there. That's a very, very popular area. Even with this acquisition, there'll still be some private land up there, but that would be a very beneficial parcel to acquire. And of course, there are other benefits. There are other recreation features that would be enhanced by this project. Eagle Creek Trail, Sunflower Flat is out there, section 27. Yeah. And so I just wanted to point out some more of the opportunities associated with this project, and most notably the trail reroute project that we already have planned for the Tangle Blue Lake Trail. And so I'll stop there. And I think Megan has probably had to drop off. But this is the place in our agenda where we were going to provide another opportunity for questions and answers. So if people have questions and answers, please, questions, we will try to provide the answers. If you have questions, please let us know. And if somebody could help with the chat, because I can't quite see the chat in Zoom. Most of our meetings are on a Teams platform, and I know where the chat box is in the Teams platform, but I'm not as proficient with it in a Zoom platform.
I can handle that.
Thank you very much.
So I just,
This is Kenneth Baldwin. I have a comment about the Tangle Blue. I took a group of kids, 10 kids up the Tangle Blue to Tangle Blue Lake last summer, and there were a lot of people at the trailhead, a lot of people at the lake and on the trail, and the trail going through that SPI section is a road. It actually ends at the wilderness boundary.
Right, it's an old haul
So
road.
it's a very popular area.
Yeah. Thank
but
you.
I'd like to kind of caution against a lot of overestimate of usage and how this is going to change things. Because Kenneth is right. We hiked Tangle Blue last year. The thing is, even with the ton of people that came this summer, it doesn't make any difference really to the local economy. We still have one gas station. We still had one restaurant. Two. We had the pizza place and Mini Cat for 3 months. They were busy, but then they're always busy in the summer. So don't overestimate how much this benefit's going to have to the economy. I know it's going to have a lot of other benefits, but people that like me that live up here kind of get pretty jaded when you say this is going to change things. It doesn't.
Yeah, thank you very much for that comment, Carolyn. I'd like to take just a minute to respond. You know, that number I provided was for the statewide economy. I actually looked for numbers for Trinity County, and most of the numbers that I could find were very old. I am not trying to oversell it, or I'm not trying to sell a bill of goods. When we were preparing this 2021 Land Water Conservation Fund proposal, it was imperative that I reach out to county supervisors and to local congressional reps. And so I did have a conversation with Supervisor Groves about this project. And he mentioned the same thing. He said, we just don't see that in Trinity County. And he said, especially up in that Scott Mountain area, he said, most people are going up I-5 and they're getting all their provisions and gassing up in Mount Shasta, and then they're dropping up and over. So he had that same thought there. I will tell you that outdoor recreation really is contributing significantly to the statewide economy and to the national economy. And we've seen numbers that show that, but I think it's good that you caution us as a group not to try to overemphasize that if it's going to pan out, if it's not going to pan out, excuse me. From my perspective, the primary benefits are the recreation opportunities and the fact that we will be able to manage the area much more cohesively if we eliminate some of that checkerboard ownership. It will provide additional recreation opportunities, but also greater protection for natural resources. And this particular area, as you know, being a resident, really provides water for 3 different river systems and numerous creeks and wet meadows, et cetera. So from a resource standpoint, it'll be we'll be able to manage it much more cohesively. So
Great, I totally agree with those other reasons. I'm just saying for the economy, for Trinity Center at Coffee Creek, the lake status, whether or not there's water in the lake, is much more of an economic driver than being able to go to a trailhead.
Yeah.
The people drive in, they've got their backpacking food already because our store doesn't sell it, and so we don't see that much of a bump from hikers. It's from people buying gas and beer to go out on their boats. So just keep that in mind, please.
Yeah, good point, Carol. Thank you very much.
Carol, when we went up with Ascend, we stopped at that KOA at campground at Trinity Center, and I bought the kids all a snack. And then when we came back after 3 days, we bought at that little cafe, outdoor cafe, we bought everybody a meal. So that was like 12 meals. So, we're unusual, I guess, but I think a lot of people stop at those places.
Right, but we only have enough business to keep one open.
Pardon?
There's only enough business to keep one open. The other restaurant closed.
Okay, so it's almost 12:15, which we had listed as kind of our
Hey, Pat?
Yes.
I have a quick question for Brenda, if that's okay.
Sure.
Brenda, Supervisor Brown and myself, we call it, the COVID effect. We saw a lot of folks coming up to recreate, as you pointed out, especially this year. And Canyon Creek Trailhead was off the charts.
Yes.
To a dangerous level if you needed an emergency vehicle there. Is there any plans I know the county has some federal money they're looking and have been looking to improve Canyon Creek for a while prior to COVID impact. But is there any discussion on, just improvement around that trailhead?
Yeah, around Canyon Creek.
Yeah.
The thing that we have been looking at most recently is improvements to the roads and the road system. And so we don't have right now enough funding to make badly needed improvements to that trailhead. However, things are changing. And so I mentioned the Great American Outdoors Act earlier, and there are 2 tenets associated with the GAOA. And one I mentioned earlier, which was permanent authorization for the Land Water Conservation Fund. But the other tenet is establishing a fund to address deferred maintenance. And so we submitted our first project list for 2021 GAOA maintenance projects earlier this summer. I think it was around August. And we are currently working on our 2022 project list. And so we did include proposals, and I want to be pretty general about this because we haven't received confirmation of funding yet, but we did include proposals in Trinity County on our list. And our focus initially was on roads and the infrastructure and access. And then we will move on from there. The maintenance fund is for 5 years. Worth of projects so far. That's how long the legislative authority lasts. And so there are potential opportunities there. And, it's a controversial topic, but we've also been looking at proposing to add user fees at some of the high use trailheads in the Trinity Alps. And so we would be looking at Canyon Creek, Stewart's Fork, Swift Creek, And then trying to provide a low-cost annual pass option so that if locals like to go out and recreate, that it would be much more economical for them to recreate in these same areas. So those are a couple of things we are looking at to try to help make badly needed improvements at some of our trailheads and on some of our trails that are getting loved to death. So I'm not sure if I really got to the heart of your question, Judy. I think you were really looking for, do we have plans right now and do we have the money to improve that trailhead? And if that's how direct that question is, we don't right now, but there are opportunities on the horizon.
That's helpful. Thank you. I mean, no one anticipated, the layer of COVID on everything we do in our lives, but we certainly saw, folks escaping the area of their local areas coming here, as we did other rural forested counties in the state. So that was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I make a quick comment on the topic?
Sure.
Okay. So I just want to revisit the idea of the TPZ for my collaborative members. And again, that's timber production zone land set aside for timber production. So if this sale goes through, and then you couple that with the Michigan, California sale, I'm concerned of the cumulative effect. The giving away this timber land, it starts to have an impact because of speaking of economics. So what I'd like the collaborative to think about is getting behind more trades, trading this recreational land for more productive timberland, because we know the Forest Service has thousands of acres of land that's crying out for timber management. So this really could be a win-win if we can get behind more trades and less sales, because we've only got so much timber TPZ land out there.
So, thank you for that comment, John. Would you mind if I just provide a couple of pieces of information there?
Not at all.
No? Oh, you
No,
wouldn't?
not at all.
Yeah. So the Michigan, California Timber Company, the timber company that owned the lands for Trinity Divide, they were actually keenly interested in selling those lands because they really were low producing timberlands. And what they wanted to do was to take the revenue and use it to purchase high producing timberland. So for them, it was really a beneficial action because they could drop the low producing land and buy something that would be more marketable for them as a company. And so that's one point I was going to make for you. And that was what their stated intention was. And then the other point is, I understand what you say about a land exchange, and I can understand why conceptually it makes sense. I will tell you from a Forest Service standpoint, land exchanges are much more complicated and they are much more time consuming to complete. We had talked about this acquisition potentially taking around 2 years to complete. Land acquisitions, land exchanges, the average is 7 years. And it's more likely that it's going to be 7 to 10 years to get through a land exchange process. It's just a very extensive, much more cumbersome process. And it's not that it's not a good idea, it's just that it's very cumbersome.
Well, you already own 3/4 of the county, so
Yeah, what more do we want? Yeah, I agreed. And we're all lucky to have the Trinity Alps Wilderness, second largest wilderness in the state.
Okay, so other questions, comments for Brenda or John at this point?
Well, I wonder if Tom, if Tom Waltz is still on, if he knows what the state of the timber
I think he's not on
harvesting is
anymore.
in those.
Kenneth, I don't think he's on the call anymore.
Oh, okay, well, forget
it.
Can you clarify the question for me? This is Keith with Sierra Pacific.
Go ahead, Kenneth.
Oh, I just I just thought that Tom might have a better idea of how much harvesting has been done up in those areas that are slated for purchase. Because a lot of that country is pretty low timber sites. And I know there's been a lot of harvesting up there in the past, so I just don't know what the state of the forest is at this.
Sure,
at this
and
point.
this is
I thought
Keith.
he might.
This is Keith. I can address that a little bit in that when we've been, and we didn't solicit this, but as we were approached, we looked at some parcels, and as they, especially those that are outside the Pacific Crest Trail, in particular in that corridor, there were parcels that were suggested to be included, and we declined to allow those to be included because of the more active management that we can participate in, whereby some of these parcels, they've had only a portion. Maybe you have a section that's 640 acres and maybe a third or sometimes a half has been lends itself to more active management. And some of that's because of those special site features we talked about, which is you got a trail going through it, you've got a major creek going through it, you've got some rock outcrops with botanical features, you have scenic values, you have wildlife values for spotted owls. So we've identified parcels that maybe have some more what I might call encumbrances of the ones that they've requested of us. And then I would say too that this is for Trinity County, Sierra Pacific. It's about a 3% of the 164,000 acres that we have. And there's multiple phases to this. And I think Brenda can address this later as far as the timing goes. But some of the parcels are part of a second phase, maybe all part of the same project, but brought in a little bit later. And so we're also actively looking at and purchasing other properties in the county. So we're not leaving, and it's got to be a mutual agreed sale, which is not consummated yet, but we're certainly considering it and interested in the interest of interested parties.
Thank you very much, Keith. I'm glad you're here.
Arnold.
Yeah, thank you.
No. I thought Arnold had something to say.
Well, no, I'm happy.
You're happy, okay. Okay, so I had put this as potentially an actionable item in case this group wanted to take some action to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. I don't know that that's necessary, but anyway, we should probably be wrapping up our meeting here fairly soon. So any thoughts, ideas?
This is Keith. Just one more parting thought is that as a forester, I don't like to let any ground go. And I think I can manage it all, including the maybe parallel values of resource. I think we have some inherent values that others can't provide, in that we have a little different perspective on fire management, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not. But just as a forester, we've looked at quite a few parcels that have been for sale, and some of them have less timber values than this. And we're still looking for the ones that have timber on them. So if you know of any, call us before you call Corral Creek, and we'll be sure to look at them.
Okay.
A marketing plug.
Okay, anybody, anything else?
Pat, are you,
No?
this is Judy, are you moving into any last minute agenda thoughts for next time?
That's what I was going to do. If we're done with this agenda item, I wanted to thank Brenda and John and Megan, though she's left the call. Really appreciate the thorough review and presentation on the proposed project.
Thank you all very much. It was nice to meet you, nice to talk to you, and thank you for making spot on the agenda for us, Pat. And would you like us to log off now so you can do the closeout with us?
Oh, you can stay on if you so desire. Doesn't really matter. So yeah, last minute. So I don't know that we have any public left other than John and Brenda, but this is a time for public input if there was any, but I don't think there is anybody. And then final kind of agenda building. So I have listed already alert wildfire cameras, post-fire recovery, and resource advisors. Is there anything else to add to the agenda?
I'm just going to throw it out for everyone's radar. Doesn't necessarily have to be in November. Maybe your January topic is the state stewardship agreement they've made with the Forest Service. I think that would probably be
the MOU between the state and U.S. Forest Service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just got settled a couple. Well, where are we? We've lost time with
Right before
fires. Yeah. So I think that would be helpful for everyone to know what that is, the goal, what the goal of that is, and what's in the details of it.
How about a report on PUD power line widening?
Oh, right. That's right.
Go in the bathroom and wash up.
Okay. Anything else, anybody?
Hey, Pat, this is Keith with Sierra Pacific. I just, I'm not sure where it fits exactly, but in light of the impacts of the fire and the size of the August complex, it occurs to me that it should be encouragement to us as a group that has some influence on the Forest Service priorities to work with them as closely as we can to get some of these projects that could be helpful in limiting the size and scope of and impacts of wildfires like this one, while we still have a county that has a substantial portion that's green.
Yeah, I think well put, Keith. Okay. Anything else?
And I think also, I would like to know how much of the burned areas are being reforested. I really don't have any idea what that.
We can make that a sub part of the post-fire recovery.
Well, and an assessment, by that time we should know how many acres were low intensities, how many were severe. You know, let's find out what we actually wind up with after this fire, with all the inversion that we had. I think an awful lot of it was very low intensity fire, might actually have been beneficial in some cases.
Yes, I think that'd be good.
It might be the initial phase in a prescribed fire regimen.
Yeah.
This is Keith with Sierra Pacific. I've been monitoring the fire from the inside and the outside, and just as you, I'm sure, have been aware that the fire conditions, the fuel conditions were such that they were extreme. Not only the winds and the weather and climate effects, but the fuels themselves, the 1,000-hour fuels were drier than the fine fuels, so that the fire was carrying from 1,000-hour fuel to 1,000-hour fuel. And so even when we had rain, it wasn't enough to even come close to slowing it down. So the intensity, and on the parts that I've looked at, has been intense. You might look from the air and see green crowns, but you've got very intense ground fire that burned very hot. And if it's a backing fire, sometimes it looks cool, but it stays on the landscape a long time and cooks the cambium and the roots. And so just watch it over a couple of years, and please don't just fly over it and say 50% burned. And I know a lot of the intensity investigations will bear that out, but I think you'll see a pretty substantial and very intense fire, because it's not a very natural size and I don't think intensity that we want to prescribe. Nobody would prescribe a fire during August to achieve the objectives that I think we want to achieve on a compartment level, let alone on a forest level.
No, well, I'm not implying that at all. I'm saying that often when we want to do a prescribed fire, the fuel conditions are such that we can't even do it until there's a pre-treatment of those understory fuels. And this is pretty well wipe those out. That's what I was saying.
This is Larry. I would like to second what Keith just said. That's my observation. Traveling around here in the South Fork Mountain areas, that like he said, the 1,000-hour fuels that were carrying this fire were doing some things I haven't witnessed before with fire, where they were burning the canopy up without it crowning. So you have 150-foot tall trees now with no canopy, but there was no fire in that canopy. It was just because of the heat created from the fuels on the ground that just cooked the canopy right off them.
Well, I'm writing a forest management plan for a property over by Xenia, and the fire went through his property. I have not had a chance to get over and look at it, but I've seen pictures and he's described it, and it basically took out ladder fuels, and because there wasn't much fuel on the ground. Went through his meadows, went through oak woodland, and he said it doesn't appear to be much damage, but as Keith said, there might be cambium damage, even though there's not damage to the crown.
So I think we just need to dedicate plenty of our agenda next time to talking about this and seeing what new information we have from the Forest Service on the assessments and that sort of thing.
Hey,
So,
Pat, this is Bob. Can you hear me?
yeah.
What about an update on rack appointments for Shasta Trinity?
Sure, I can give you one right now. They've done nothing.
Yeah, I know.
And I
How
can't
about a
imagine that
prognosis?
between now and the end of November with presidential election on the 3rd, that anything's going to get done anytime soon. But I can ask.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna say I think we're about ready to close it out. For no other reason than I've got to drive to Reading and go to an eye doctor appointment.
And this is Kathleen. I'll just throw in before we all sign off, not necessarily a public comment, but
Yeah.
I think everyone will be interested in the Weaverville Community Forest public meeting, which is next Wednesday, starting at 5:30 on Zoom or for call-in. And I think Oz mentioned earlier that info to call in or log in on Zoom is on our website on the WCF page. So hope to see somebody there.
And maybe what I'll do is I'll send through the collaborative email the flyer out to everybody.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So thank you, everybody. And again, Brenda and John, thank you so much.
Thanks so
Everybody
much.
Have a good afternoon.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks again, y'all.
Yeah.